Okay, thank you very much. Welcome to this meeting of the panel of subcommittee, the licensing subcommittee of Birmingham City Council. I'm Councillor Philip Davis. I'll be chairing this hearing of the subcommittee. Before we start, could you all please mute your microphones for the moment so we can improve the sound quality while I talk about the procedure? And if you could also turn off your cameras with the exception of the committee members. This assists us with the broad bandwidth. Committee members will have their cameras switched on throughout the hearing. I hope everyone attending today's meeting has their mobiles on silent so that there are no distractions and that you're in a room free from other distractions. It's very important for what I hope are obvious reasons that those attending the meeting and making representations are able to hear me and members of the subcommittee and officers. Any distractions could result in the meeting being suspended temporarily or to another date and time under the regulations for these types of meetings. I can also confirm that this is a public meeting and is therefore being live streamed on the City Council's website so that the general public can view it. The formal agenda is as follows. 1. Notice of recording webcast. I advise the meeting to note that this meeting will be webcast for live or subsequent broadcast by the Council's meeting YouTube site, and that members of the press and public may record and take photographs, except where there are confidential or exempt items. 2. Declarations of interest. Members are reminded they must declare all relevant pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests arising from any business to be discussed at this meeting. If a disclosable pecuniary interest is declared, an elected member must not speak or take part in that agenda item. Any declarations will be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. 3. Apologies and notifications on members. No apologies have been submitted. 4. Minutes. I confirm the minutes of the meeting held on October 1st, 2021 and 4th of October 2021. Ditto the 29th of November 2021 and the 29th of November 2021 at 12 o'clock. So can I welcome you to this hearing for a variation of the premises licence in respect of Walmley Cricket and Sports Club, Eldon Drive, Walmley, Sutton Coldfield, B761LT. So a few more introductions. As I said, my name is Councillor Philip Davis and I'm chairing the panel today. You'll have gathered that I have a bit of a cold. I'm hoping not to have to break off, but anyway, we should be okay. With me are my fellow licensing subcommittee members, Councillors Martin Straker-Wells and Councillor Bob Beecham. Also present in the meeting are the following officers: the licensing officer, Mr. Papinder Nandra, the committee manager, Ms. Katie Townsend, and the committee lawyer, Joanne Swampelite. And now I come to the parties who are attending today. For the applicant, Mr. Humphreys. Mr. Humphreys, can you hear me?
Yes, Chair, and I've hopefully returned to your screens. Yes, I'm here representing the applicant today. I'm a barrister instructed to do so. I have with me Carl Moore, who is the licensing consultant on behalf of the applicant, and I also have with me Martin Hoffman, who is the chairperson of the club.
Thank you very much for those introductions. Now, I'll therefore move on to. Oh, can I just confirm, Mr. Hoffman, are you able to hear me? Okay.
Yes, I am, sir. Thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Moore.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We're all in communication. Good. And now onto those making representations today. I have a list. I'll just go down the list. If you could indicate that you're here. Mr. Miles Thompson.
Yes, I'm here, Councillor.
Yes. Thank you. I don't have the titles on it for everybody. I'll just say G. Carmichael.
Yes, present.
Okay, thank you.
Hello.
L. Gillett.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. R. Hussain. Mr. Hussain?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Dr. Valerie Inchley,
Yes, I'm here.
thank you. Ms. Sarah Lott. Sarah Lott. Okay. Doesn't appear to be here. Jane Murphy. No. Miss Debbie Lynch.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mr. and Mrs. Gormley.
Mr. Gormley's here.
Okay, Mr. Gormley, thank you. And Miss Deborah Hingley.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. That's the list. So I will come to you in due course, but obviously I'm still setting up procedure at the moment. Part of which is to ask if anyone making representations today about this application wants to withdraw their representations at this stage. That's really addressed to those of you I've just listed. Do any of you want to withdraw your representations? I'll take silence as an indication that you don't want to withdraw. Okay, so nobody's signifying they want to withdraw. Thank you for that. Back to the procedure then. I assume all parties have read and understood the Licensing Committee's procedural rules sent out with the notice of today's hearing. Please note that given the nature of today's proceedings, I may at my discretion amend the procedural rules to reflect the fact that this meeting is taking place online, but I want to assure you that all such amendments won't impact on the fairness of the hearing. We use the chat function in Microsoft Teams to aid communication. One of the icons on your computer, as you know, is a speech bubble for the chat. It's helpful to confirm attendance today. If you could all type your names into the chat function, everybody attending, please. That will assist with the record of the meeting. I'm just doing it myself now. There we are. And okay.
Hello.
Yes.
I can't find the chat function, I'm afraid.
Nor can
Well, don't
I.
worry. Don't worry if you
I
can't
can't.
find it. It simply helps us in terms of, we've got you noted as attending. It's not
Okay,
a problem.
that's all right. It's sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
we use
fairly
it as
new
a
to
back-
this. I do apologise.
No, don't worry. We use it as a backup. It's not a problem. And you can always, you're obviously here, you're speaking, so that's fine. And I'll check that you're in communication.
Okay, thank you.
But it's helpful if there's some problem with communication, we can use it as a backup. Right. So we keep the chat. To those of you who've got the chat column, I should keep it open for the duration of the meeting so that everyone can follow any messages being posted in the chat. But you can communicate in the normal way by signifying that you wish to speak at the appropriate time. I don't think anybody has dialed in on audio, telephone, rather than Microsoft Teams. And with the exception of subcommittee members, please keep the camera off unless you're the person speaking. If there are problems with bandwidth, which cause difficulties with the sound, I may, at my discretion, ask everyone to turn their cameras off so the meeting can proceed with everyone able to hear and be heard. I've now reached the point at which I ask if anybody, if I address you, Mr. Humphreys, first, wishes to make a preliminary point. Do you have any preliminary points, Mr. Humphreys?
No, sir.
No. Okay, thank you. For the people making representation, this is really about whether any technical procedural issues, about process, evidence you want to bring in, and so on. So, do any of those of you making representations want to make a preliminary point about process? I'll take silence as indicating that you don't. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so again, just to complete the procedural points, the licensing officer, Mr. Nandra, will present the report shortly. Then the applicant for the variation will present their case, and we're asking if this could be kept to approximately 20 minutes for the presentation. Next, those making representations will be invited to make their case. Again, we allot 20 minutes for that. So as I said, you'll have to be disciplined about what you say, and if you agree with what has been said before you, you can simply say, I agree with the previous comments. If I can ask all parties to speak as slowly and clearly as they can, because the officers are taking notes for the minutes, and the meeting is being live streamed, as we've seen on the City Council's website. If at any time it's somebody else's turn to speak, please mute your microphone and use the chat function to communicate if necessary. Please note that members of the subcommittee will be able to ask questions at any stage, what we try to do so at the conclusion of a presentation. Cross-examination by the applicant and those making representations will not be permitted unless the members consider it necessary. Where questions are raised by members of the subcommittee or by those present, they must signify. They can signify this in the usual way, verbally, although the chat function is there as a backup. If at any point you can't hear or are having problems with your internet connection, please use the chat facility to alert the meeting manager. Chair will then ask the person speaking to repeat what they've just said. It's important that you use the chat function. Also, if you're unable to hear, to indicate to the meeting manager there is a problem. And again, we can probably alter the bandwidth by closing down cameras a little bit. Could I point out that occasionally it may be necessary for the subcommittee to take legal advice. My discretion, I may ask all parties to wait in the meeting while members and the relevant officers withdraw to take legal advice using a separate meeting within Microsoft Teams. We will then return to this meeting and continue. If at any time the live stream being broadcast on the Council's website fails, I'll ask you all to mute your microphones and cameras and to stop speaking until the live stream is restored. If at any time the meeting goes in a private session, the meeting manager will pause the live stream. Once the private part of the meeting is over, I'll ask the meeting manager to confirm that the live stream has resumed before we continue. At the conclusion of the hearing, I'll invite all parties to make a brief closing submission. Can I stress no decision will be taken until all evidence has been heard. At the decision-making stage, the members and the relevant officers will withdraw from the meeting in order to determine the decision. They'll go into a separate Microsoft Teams meeting. If we need to clarify any matters, we'll telephone the relevant party through the meeting manager. The members will then make their decision. You'll be notified of the decision of the subcommittee within 5 working days. Well, that's all the process issues. So what I'd like to do now is ask the licensing officer, Mr. Pin Nandra, to present his report, please. Mr. Nandra.
Thank you, Chair. The Wormley Cricket and Tennis Club Limited applied on the 10th of December 2021 to vary the premises licence for Wormley Cricket and Sports Club, Alden Drive, Wormley, Sutton Coldfield, B76 1LT. The purpose of the report is to consider relevant representations that have been made in respect of an application to vary the premises licence, which seeks to increase the licensed area inside the premises and to add external licensed areas, including covered terraces and grassed areas adjacent to the building, as shown on the revised plan attached to the report at Appendix 75. The current premises licence only permits one licensable activity, being the sale of alcohol for consumption on and off the premises, to take place within the function room of the premises, as per the existing plan attached to the current licence as shown at Appendix 77. The application also seeks to add the provision of regulated entertainment consisting of films, indoor sporting events and recorded music to operate indoors only from 11 AM until 11:45 PM Monday to Thursday, 11 AM until 1 AM Friday and Saturday, and 11 AM until 10:30 PM on Sunday, with live music to operate indoors only from 11 AM until 11 PM Monday to Sunday. The application also seeks to add the provision of late night refreshment from 11 p.m. until 11:45 p.m. Monday to Thursday and 11 p.m. until 1 a.m. Friday and Saturday. The applicant is not seeking to vary the licensable times for the sale of alcohol under the scope of this application, but is seeking to permit the activity to take place within the increased internal and additional external licensed areas. The premises is to remain open to the public from 8 a.m. until 12 midnight, Monday to Thursday, 8 a.m. until 1:30 a.m. Friday and Saturday, and 8 a.m. until 11 p.m. Sunday. The application also seeks to remove and update several conditions on the current premises license. These conditions are detailed in the application form, and other dates and times are specified in the application form. Representations have been received from other persons, which are attached at appendices 1 to 74. The application is attached at appendix 75. Conditions have been agreed with environmental health and the applicant, which are attached at appendix 76. The current premises license is attached at appendix 77, and the site location plans are attached at appendix 78. When carrying out its licensing functions, a licensing authority must have regard to Birmingham City Council's Statement of Licensing Policy and the guidance issued by the Secretary of State under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003. The licensing authority is also required to take such steps as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. The options available to the subcommittee today are to grant the variation application, to refuse the whole or part of the application, or to modify the conditions of the license. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Nandra. So we now move on to the applicant's presentation. So, Mr. Humphreys, and of course you can bring your colleagues in as you wish. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. The approach we'll adopt in terms of presenting our application to you is I'll outline it, and then if you and your fellow councillors, Chair, have any questions, then the team with me can answer as appropriate, but I'll do the talking for the main part. Councillors, I'm sure as you've seen in the documentation, there's a detailed letter from Mr. Hoffman, who's with me, which outlines the club's response to our application, really, and we're very disappointed, I think it's fair to say, to have to be here before the committee today, because clearly what has happened is there's been some misunderstanding of what it is we're actually applying for. As has just been outlined to you by the licensing officer, this application is in essence a regularisation, shall I say that. We're not seeking to extend our opening hours. We're not seeking to extend the times at which we sell alcohol. All we're doing is looking to update the licence, basically, by changing the area, modifying some of the conditions, and regularising the activities that can take place at the club. Of those, having gone through all of the representations, the concern that seems to have been highlighted is in relation to noise, but again on a misunderstanding of what it is we're applying for. And so hopefully by the time I finished outlining the application on behalf of the club, those who have made representations and those who are attending here today will be satisfied that what we're applying for is something that is entirely acceptable and actually desirable in this location. Just to give you some background about the club was actually founded in 1886 and has played at this location and been located here since 1919. So the club has actually been in operation in this location for 103 years. Councillors, I think it's fair to say that that is a very long-standing commitment to this local community, and through that 100+ years, we have done a lot of good for the local community. In terms of where the club is currently at, on the cricket side of things, there's 6 senior teams playing on a Saturday, 2 senior teams that play on a Sunday. There's a women's Super 8 hardball pairs competition that's run there. We also have softball for women over the summer. We have children's leagues that take place, and we put out youth teams. So, for example, last summer, we had over 180 children take part in cricket at the club. Again, that's a very significant number of local individuals benefiting from sport in this location. There's also a football club that's run from the premises, from the site. We had 17 youth teams playing last summer, 15 boys teams and 2 girls teams, and the women's section is continually looking to expand. There's a darts team that play at the club. We have community events, for example, the NHS run diabetes clinics at the club. And so, and a lot of volunteers are involved in all of these activities. So very extensive commitment to this location, providing, as I'm sure you're aware, a very positive thing. I don't need to outline for this committee the benefits of sport. And that's who we are. We're a volunteer-run organisation for the most part. And the profits from the bars, such as they are, go back into the club so that we can subsidise membership, increase the accessibility of sport to local people and local youth in particular, and any sort of subsidiary profit just simply goes back into the maintenance and management of the club. I'm sure I don't need to tell you that running a club like this does cost money, and providing that level of facilities for youngsters of a whole host of ages from all different sorts of backgrounds comes with a cost, and we need to pay for that. And one of the main ways we do that is through the bar. Now, in terms of what we're actually applying for today, if I could take you in your agenda packs to the plan that it is that we're looking to submit, which I think you should find on, well, my copy of the agenda pack, each page has 2 numbers on. So page 156 of 176 or page 120, it's also numbered, but that's the plan that we're applying for. And so, councillors, what happened during the COVID lockdown, the club was remodelled, so the internal layout has changed and been restructured, and so we need to update the plan to reflect that. We're also seeking to add part of the outside area to the licensed area. So if you're looking at that plan, if you orientate it so it's in a landscape fashion, to the left is an area described as a covered area. So that is, as it says, it's outdoors, but it's covered. And what the club is looking to do is basically have a pop-up bar in there. So, for example, when have a particularly popular match taking place on a Saturday, or a sporting event that might attract more than our usual number of members, we can have a pop-up bar there to just facilitate the service of drinks to the outside area. Clearly, under our license already, people can buy drinks inside and take them and stand outside to watch the cricket, to watch the football, whatever. That's not really going to change. All we're looking to do is have the ability to, like I say, have a temporary bar on certain days just to facilitate that activity. It's not really for the purposes of any potential consequences a meaningful change. It's good to us because it allows us to manage the flow of people, provide quicker service, etc. But I don't think it's anything that should cause any concern in terms of the promotion of the licensing objectives. The club will just continue to manage itself as it does. And like I say, already people can buy drinks inside and take them outside and stand there and watch the sport. So a relatively modest change, and it's really one of form. As you're aware, we need to have an up-to-date plan to reflect the physical layout of the premises, which has now changed, and we're seeking to regularise that. In terms of the other elements of the application, like I said earlier, having gone through all of the representations that have been made, there seems to have been a misunderstanding about what it is we're applying for. The potentially sensitive element of the application is the provision of live music. That is not going to go on beyond 11 o'clock. We've agreed with environmental health very strict conditions in relating to noise. And councillors, as you're aware, your own licensing environmental health department are the statutory expert on noise-related issues. In this case, this is not just a case where environmental health have looked at things on plan. There was an on-site meeting which environmental health attended with members of the representatives of the club, looked around the site, looked around the internal of the club, and as a result of that, they have confirmed that they're happy with the application, subject to those conditions being imposed, which we agree to. One of those conditions is in relation to a noise limiter, so that will have to be fixed. And then the way they work is if a pre-set level of noise is exceeded, that simply cuts the power and the music stops. And so incredibly effective way of managing noise. And councillors, hopefully you've seen in the representations that have been made, numerous of the representations confirm the club are very good in sticking to times and not having activities go on beyond 11 o'clock. And so there's recognition already that we run things sensibly. The concern was about a change, but like I say, in relation to any live music, will not take place after 11 o'clock. And so in my submission, there is no cause for concern in that regard. Beyond that, nobody's raised any issues that I actually need to address you in relation to, because any additional points that have been raised just simply don't relate to the application that we've actually made. As has been outlined, we're not changing our hours, we're not changing the times at which we sell alcohol. It's a modification of the map, the plan, apologies, attached to the application. Is an update to some of the conditions of which nobody has made any comment whatsoever. So again, they should just go through on the nod, because there's no concern in relation to those. And those modifications to the conditions are just classic updates to bringing this license into a more contemporary fashion, and allows easier regulation of the license by the licensing authority. So again, should be a positive thing, and everybody should be welcoming that, because it allows better management of the license. Councillors, in simple terms, we're, as I've already said, very disappointed to be here. I really hope you've had the opportunity to read the letter that's been submitted by Mr. Hoffman on behalf of the club, which outlines the background to this application. We've been in this location for 103 years, positively contributing to the local community. We want to continue to do so. We don't consider that our application raises any issues that needs to be any concern to anybody. It's been signed off on by all of the responsible authorities, including, like I say, following a site visit from Environmental Health. And it really is a good application that should be approved. Councillors, as I introduced earlier, I've got the team with me. I've got Mr. Moore, who's the licensing consultant, who the club has brought on to assist with this application, and I've got Mr. Hoffman, who's the chair of the club. And just on that, I'd just add, I'd hope, sir, by the fact that I'm here, by the fact that Mr. Moore has been instructed, that really demonstrates the seriousness with which the club takes matters of this nature, and its commitment to doing things properly and being a responsible neighbour to the location it finds itself in. If you have any questions for us, please ask us, and we can field them across the team. But it really is a very simple application, and it is very disappointing that we're having to appear before you today.
Thank you, Mr. Humphreys. I will go to my colleagues now. So, Councillor Martin Straker-Wells, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Mr. Humphreys. Well, I hear what Mr. Humphreys says about the fact that effectively there's no great change in all of this. However, it's in the eye of the beholder, and the people who have made representations obviously feel that there is a change, because the inclusion of music, film, and sport, as well as sporting events, will presumably be in the eyes of the people looking at this application, augment the potential noise. I also acknowledge the and noise. Yes, you're absolutely right. Noise is the main concern, but I have to say also that what I'm picking up is not just noise, and you do mention the preset controls as a control, but the extent to which controls are in place at all times, both inside and outside. As you say, people can buy drinks now and take them outside and watch sporting events. But and of course, 11 o'clock rules should give peace and quiet to local residents who are nearby at night. But it is about control, because I think that is the key thing, is it not? Am I right? That control and over noise, over spectators' behaviour, over the other things that are worrying, that is what the club is being asked to do. And is there sufficient control?
Yes, so well, we would certainly say so. And actually, as I've already outlined, we would say that granting this license actually puts more control on things than they are currently. There's additional conditions being added, as we've already discussed, in relation to noise. They're particularly strict. There's updates of some of the existing conditions. And so it allows greater supervision of the license. in terms of how the club would operate, there wouldn't actually be much change in that regard, because a lot of what we're doing or applying to do, we can do already, as I've outlined. And it's not a situation where there's a pre-existing problem, because if there were, for example, environmental health would clearly be making representations in relation to noise and suggesting that there was a problem. But in fact, they've done the opposite and have approved the application and suggested conditions. So that demonstrates to you that there is control already, and that there will continue to be control in the future. It is responsibly run, and actually a lot of the representations that have been made do recognise that. There is references to how the club runs things at the moment, and how that has been found to be acceptable in the locality. And we say that that's what we'll continue to do.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Humphreys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Straker-Wells. So, Councillor Beecham, do you have any questions?
Yes, please, Chairman. One or two. I have difficulty in grasping what extra controls there would be to ensure that there isn't a problem with the outside world, and I wondered what was being put into place so to do, and also what sort of time is there, incidentally, also is there lighting on this whole outside area that means that all sorts of activities can take place at all sorts of hours, and how much of an increase in traffic, when I say traffic, personnel as well as vehicular traffic, is likely to take place with these alterations. And if Mr. Humphreys could enlighten me on that, I'd be grateful.
Yes, sir. I'll ask in relation to some of your points, one of the other team to jump in on, but I'll just deal with a few preliminary points. In terms of increased, I'll use the word throughput, so people being around, etc. We're not anticipating a change in that as a result of this application. Like I say, the purpose of licensing this outdoor area is just simply to allow us to, when required, have a pop-up bar there that can sell alcohol. We don't anticipate that will result in a increase in people. It's just a different way of managing the premises and allowing us to do that, rather than having to have everybody come indoors and then go outdoors when they need to buy a drink. So we're not anticipating a change in the level of attendances as a result of the application. If I could perhaps just ask Mr. Hoffman to just assist in describing the lighting arrangement. So if I could just ask him to turn his camera and microphone on for a moment.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Humphreys. I can't unfortunately put the camera on because I'm operating on a colleague's phone, but I hope you can hear me. If you can just clarify that.
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, thank you. Just to cover the point about the lighting, there'll be no more additional lighting than there already is. As a club, we obviously have to comply with health and safety, and we have to have our kind of immediate outside areas lit anyway. And there is no additional lighting that will be applied in those areas. So I don't anticipate any further light pollution to the neighbours.
Thank you. And just in relation to conditions, can I take you, councillors, to the two numbers on the page, page 159 of 176, or page number 123 of the agenda pack? And that's where you'll find the conditions that have been agreed with environmental health. So the first condition is the detailed condition in relation to the imposition of a noise limiting device. So you can see that at part B of that, the requirement of that is that it maintains the volume at a preset level that's determined by the Environmental Protection Unit, and basically prevents music from exceeding that level. And then there's a condition imposed in relation to the external area, which is condition 2. So 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. Sunday to Thursday, and 11 a.m. To 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday. That's the only times when external areas will be open to customers for drinking. So there's a condition limiting the hours at which those external areas can be used to attendees at the club drinking. So that is control there, enforced by condition as part of the license. Next condition then creates a specific designated smoking area, which again has been chosen by Environmental Health following their visit to the club, has been identified as the most sensible place to have that, to minimise any potential noise from outdoor use. And then the last condition is one about closing doors when the function room is in use for regulated entertainment, again to trap and manage noise. So detailed and appropriate conditions which the club have agreed with in order to manage noise and provide the types of control, I think, Councillor, that you were asking about. Councillor, so I covered all the points you asked about there. I'm aware you asked various elements in the same question. Is that a response to everything you wanted to hear about?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beecham. No questions from me, so I will now thank you, Mr. Humphries. I will now move on to the representations.
I'll just turn my camera off now then, Chair. I think was the request earlier to help manage bandwidth.
Okay, thank you very much. And as you know, there'll be an opportunity to sum up later. Okay, I have the list here. We need to keep the time. So I've got roughly 3 minutes really per person in terms of those who've indicated they're here today.
Chair,
Mr. Thompson.
Chair,
yes.
The objectors have a maximum of 20 minutes each.
Oh, right. Okay. Thank you for correcting me then. Okay. Okay. Mr. Thompson, I'd be grateful, obviously, if
Yes.
you could think about the variation which is in front of us today. What are your particular concerns?
I have a question about this noise limiting device, and obviously it covers music. Now the question is, will that noise limiting device also control the TV if they're going to be broadcasting sporting events inside the building? And if they do have live music that is not amplified, i.e. acoustics, so things like drums, trumpets and things like that, how is that covered by their license application?
Mr. Humphries will no doubt note these points and try and answer them during the summing up. Okay, is that your key point then, Mr. Thompson?
No, the other one is regarding the lighting. The cricket club actually use floodlights. So those floodlights often run into the evening. They're noisy, they create fumes, and obviously there's the light pollution. So that would be another thing that I would like answered, perhaps later on in the summing up. Okay.
Well, that's how it works. Yes, Mr. Humphries, as I say, will note these points and try and respond then.
Okay, and then regarding the mention that the door leading to the outside area would be closed at all times when there's music on. Now, will that also apply to windows in the building? Because obviously, if people open windows in the building, how's that going to be managed? Will somebody from the club be, enforcing the closure of those windows, making sure the door's closed? Because obviously, once those are open, then we will still get the noise leaking out into the area.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
There is an issue with parking.
Parking
which
is a,
hasn't been brought up yet.
Parking is a planning matter. We don't. It's not really within our purview because we're the licensing committee.
Okay. Now, also, so going back to the noise limiting device, how will that be monitored? Will that be something that will be checked on a regular basis to ensure that all amplified equipment is put through that system?
Okay. Other questions?
I think that covers my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Carmichael.
Hello. Yes. Good morning. It's Mrs.
It's Mrs. Carmichael. Sorry.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. I think yes.
Right. Good morning. Unlike the subcommittee professionals and Warmley Cricket Club agents who are familiar with the hearings, I unfortunately am not. I am merely a local resident and a neighbourhood watch member that would like to share the overwhelming concerns relating to lives affected by Warmley Cricket Club from a resident's perspective and put forward a number of questions to the applicant. It regretfully transpires that the blue notice that was initially tucked away just on the cricket club gates was not fully comprehended. This in turn, and probably due to seasonal pressures and critical time-related circumstances, resulted in inadvertent errors contained within notices that residents received. However, despite the fact longer alcohol times were not being applied for this time, it is abundantly clear that many residents are already worried, upset and exasperated by the hours the club operates, the activities it hosts and the bad behaviours of some that utilise club facilities and grounds. The extensions that have been applied for will increase drinking areas inside and out. They will cater for and accommodate more people at the same time. This will likely add to the many problems in existence which are already affecting residents. The music extensions applied for are to encourage customers to stay longer, increase bar takings and utilise club licensing hours to their full extent. We are not against sport or the children and adults who want to participate in activities in their life. This has always been a village cricket club intended for the local community's benefit. Unfortunately, the essence of what initially was a sporting cricket club is dedicated to the sport has been lost. Its main aim now appears to be focused on diverse activities and a social money-making venue. The environmental hours and added conditions seem to be a compromise in theory. However, these beg the following 10 questions that I would be grateful if the applicant could please address at the relevant time. Number 1. What happened to the noise limiting device that was believed to have previously been fitted? Number 2, if a new noise limiting device is installed, will this be incorporated in all the areas that amplified sounds may take place? And where are these areas? Number 3, in the absence of air conditioning, how can guaranteed implementation of closed windows and doors throughout the club be controlled, especially during warmer months? Number 4, how will the outside terrace, tent and grassed area be cleared of drinkers at the prescribed times, which have been stated by the environmental health? Number 5, how will these cleared areas be maintained until nightly close in order to guarantee the compliance? Number 6, will non-drinkers be allowed to remain seated in outside areas? If so, then how will noise be controlled? Even with the best will in the world, it is impossible to comprehend how a guaranteed prevention of people returning to outside seating can realistically be maintained, short of removing all seating every time. Number 7, on how many occasions are the outside TV screens going to be used? And will there be any amplified sound used on these occasions? Number 8, who will be responsible for ensuring all outside areas are fully compliant with hours stated? And how often during each evening will this be checked and enforced? Number 9, will any covered areas outside of the actual clubhouse be classed as inside for anything, i.e. the tent? Number 10, how will it be ensured that all persons anywhere on cricket club grounds vacate the site on nightly close down? And how often will the responsible person liaise with Neighbourhood Watch, and who will that person be? In 2014, club agents stated to Birmingham City Council the grounds at Eldon Drive were insufficient for their needs. We are now in 2022, 8 years later, and the activities hosted are more than ever before, creating both day and nighttime noise. Many participants' activities are pushed onto the outside edges of club grounds and run parallel with residents' gardens, divided only by a fence. The relentless uses of the grounds severely impact on homeowners' quiet enjoyment of their own private spaces. Summer months, when it is pleasant to be outside, increase existing problems dramatically. It is neither fair or reasonable to expect households to continually endure noise and associated problems whilst using their gardens. In addition, parking at the cricket club is totally inadequate, which results in drivers' indiscriminate parking in the surrounding areas. This causes numerous dangers and obstructions, which impacts upon the general safety of pedestrians and road users. Residents have endured much over the years without complaint, and to my knowledge have never been consulted by the club. Sadly, many individuals who have had the audacity to complain were just voices in the dark, met with complete negativity. I feel the chairman's letter to members provided by club agents contains a little poetic licence, despite stating approachability and concern. As neighbours, we are threatened with housing being built if club trading is restricted. However, given the present noise levels that constantly have been tolerated, I personally would opt for the housing. Domestic properties repeatedly emanating noise nuisance would not be allowed. Whilst it is correct applications were initially misunderstood, it does not detract from the fact that many people are very unhappy about all the additional issues. Any further licensing to utilise spaces will mean more people can be accommodated and catered for at the same time. More people generate more noise and likely also generate more antisocial behaviours and parking issues. Many who frequent the club do not even live in the area. Since the lodging of applications, operation of the club has been low-key, but I fear that is the lull before the storm. We are not anti-cricket club at all, but local residents really have had enough disruption to their lives, and it is time to allow them to reclaim some peace and tranquility. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Carmichael. I'll bring in member questions right at the end of these submissions. Mr. Gillett?
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yep.
I concur wholeheartedly with what the lady has just said. One of the things which occurred to me is the environmental noise device, which apparently switches the power off. how long does the power stay off? Can somebody else just pop along and switch it back on again? Or will it switch it off for the whole evening? My other thought is that it seems unfair that the residents should have to put up with the increased disruption of the expanding cricket club. Surely the cricketers and the footballers and the entertainment people wish the club to stay. So surely it is up to them to make sacrifices as well as the residents. You can't blame the residents for the problems. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Gillett, thank you very much for that. Mr. Hussain?
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, what would you like to tell us?
I think the fellow residents before me have covered off the main kind of points and concerns, and I wholeheartedly concur with what Mrs. Carmichael was just saying there about the usage of the cricket club and intended purpose going forward. I'm a new resident in this area. I only moved in 2019, and since then I've had a number of concerns myself. I think coming to this forum, it's allowed me to kind of voice myself now that this has kind of come into light. But I'm not going to try and waste time and repeat some of the things that have been mentioned and the questions raised. The few points that I've kind of picked up from the chairman's letter, I suppose. Well, to start off with, I don't recall receiving any sort of notification. The letters that are in the pack personally, it's addressed as anonymous sender. So I'm kind of questioning the actual submission of notification from the cricket side to the local residents. It could have been anybody. My main concerns about the fact that the controls that the cricket club is talking about in terms of putting into place or adhering to in the chairman's letter itself is admitted to a couple of mistakes there about being in breach of the license and also using lighting, I think is mentioned around floodlights at unreasonable time. So my kind of concerns goes around, well, if the application is granted, an extension is allowed, what guarantee do we as residents have around the maintenance of those controls? There's some admissions there about not adhering to those controls, and also I have personally submitted some video evidence which shows that the cricket club has been operating outside of hours with loud music being played outside of the 1 p.m. Kind of usage. So I wonder if that's been considered, and that again is another breach of the licensing conditions. And I just wonder how many times more will they be in breach of those licensing conditions going forward. In terms of questions, again, I think it relates to the power cut device. Whilst it is being claimed that the limiter is going to be allowed to cut the power, I'd like to understand how this is going to be monitored and fed back to the council. Is there an audit taking place, or how frequently will you expect to keep a log of those accounts where the noise is going outside of its limit, I suppose. So that my question is around that. But I've kind of made my points in my original objection letter, and I just hope that the council considers those points. I've got 2 little children, and this is really affecting us in terms of trying to get some peace at night when the loud music is being played. So I think I'm just going to wrap up there now, and yeah, thank you for allowing me the time to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Hussain. Thank you very much for that. The council, of course, will respond to any complaints about alleged breaches of the existing licence. I'll move on to Dr. Inchley next. Dr. Inchley, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Thank you for this opportunity. I would say two things to start with. One is that, yes, most of what Mrs. Carmichael has said, I heartily agree with. Secondly, I apologise that I was under the impression from the information I'd received that it was longer hours that were being requested, and that is clear that it's not so. However, what I would say is that because of the extension of the activities of the club from being purely a small sort of countrified cricket club in days gone by to being a multi-sports club with social activities added on, inevitably there are more people. So the extension of the outside area for serving drinks and drinking the drinks will inevitably mean that more people will be there for the social side as opposed to the purely sporting side. And this is something which happens later at night, is associated with noise and light pollution issues. But I want to home in not so much on that, although those are things of considerable annoyance to many of the residents on at least one side of Eldon Drive. I am a resident on the far side and therefore not personally affected so much. But my personal area of concern is regarding the numbers of people, the increase in traffic, and because of the parking, which I understand is not your remit, but it does feed into this because there are cars coming in, then going out because they can't park, or else they park in Eldon Drive. The thing is that there is one single entrance to Eldon Drive, which is relatively narrow. Already there is a parking problem in Eldon Drive, and the more people attending the cricket club, the more difficult this is. And the issue which I have already raised with the Residents' Association is the extreme difficulty for emergency vehicles to reach homes in Eldon Drive because of the excess traffic and parking on the estate. And some of this, at least, is caused through the increase in numbers attending the cricket club. There are frequently ambulances that need to attend because a lot of the residents are elderly. I've looked into the layout of the grounds, and it is difficult for a large vehicle like a fire engine to get into the estate if there are cars parked around. And therefore I would raise this as one extra issue, which I don't think other people have mentioned. And I think that is basically my submission to you. And thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. I've now got Miss Debbie Lynch listed. Ms. Lynch?
Yes, good morning. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we are.
Good morning. I'm here with my husband as well. I just firstly want to congratulate you.
Sorry, Chair, I can't hear that.
Sorry, we do have a bit of a problem, Miss Lynch, with your with the clarity of your comment. Could you try again?
Yes, also well. Just to say that I would completely agree with Mr. Carmichael. So I would not know all her points once more, but that we go with that.
I think I'm sorry, the quality's still very poor. I tell you what, let me go to the next two people. Could you see if you could go out and come back in, and then we'll come to you last, if that's all right, in the hope that your broadband position is improved. Yeah. All right. Okay, we'll come back to you later if you could try that. Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll come back to Ms. Lynch, but Mr. Gormley, would you like to make your comments?
Good morning. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yes, you're loud and clear.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, I think Mrs. Carmichael has done an excellent job of putting forward the concerns of the local residents, which I share and wholeheartedly agree with. I think the comment by the lawyer around they're not expecting any increase of people, therefore that equals no increase in turnover, is largely attributable to no parties at Downing Street. The whole purpose of this is to increase footfall and to increase revenue. So I find that remark rather offensive, really, because we all know the purpose of the application. A couple of key points I'd like to also add is that the timing of this falls very nicely with the forthcoming sporting events, namely the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham and the World Cup in Qatar, both of which take place this year, which will increase the sporting events and the coverage shown at the Warmley Cricket Club, and therefore increasing the footfall. Additionally, the licensing of the venue will mean that residents who are frequenting local establishments for drink will be leaving those establishments and heading towards the Warmley Cricket Club in order to stop later on into the early hours of the morning. I'd like to also turn to the lockdown period, which we had 12 months ago, where venues, including the Warmley Cricket Club, had to operate an outside-only licensing because of the restrictions by the government. And during that time, the increase in noise, the increase in antisocial behaviour, the additional parking problems and the taxis calling at early hours of the morning to pick up residents who are shouting and screaming at the early hours was a significant increase in the normal activities when we're not operating under lockdown rules. The other point that I'd like to make is that although you say that the car parking isn't an issue and not on your remit, it is causing considerable concern to local residents, including our previous speaker, because the way that the participants of the cricket club are parking is causing families, including people with pushchairs, to go out onto the road on Penslake Road and Eldon Drive to get to navigate around vehicles parked wherever they can find a space. And that is a real concern because there has already been a number of accidents, albeit minor at this stage, on the corner of Pens Lane and Penslake Road, where the parking of the people going to the cricket club have blocked the whole corner. The point about emergency vehicles has already been made, so I won't labour that point, but it's just the general parking. And when challenged, the abuse that the people give us is incredible. There is a car park at the cricket club, albeit they used part of it for an extension recently. There is still some parking there, yet they still choose to park on the roads. And when approached, the abusive language that we have to put up with around why they park there and not park on the actual cricket ground itself is laughable. They say they're worried about the cricket ball hitting their cars. They say it gives us a quick getaway because Eldon Drive is so difficult to get in and out of. This application will only add to those problems. The other final point I will make is that the number of events that take place there now has gone from being a local village cricket club to now football, to women's clubs, to youth teams. The lawyer commented about the 103-year history, but in recent years, the number of activities taking place and the number of noise has increased considerable. And then finally, I am also a licensee, and I am familiar with the noise machine that people have referred to earlier. When that is exceeded, it literally cuts the power for a short period, no more than about 10 minutes. It is then reset, and once reset, they can pick up where they left off until they exceed the noise level again. And in all the years that equipment has been in the establishment, which I am a director of, we have never, ever had an environmental or anybody visit us to see if we are complying. So my challenge would be that installing it is one thing, monitoring it and complying is another. I've made my points. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gormley. I'll move to Ms. Hingley now. Deborah Hingley.
Hello there. Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
You'll hear me. Great. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak this morning. To be honest, I'm going to be relatively brief because most of the issues that I have as a resident here and I live right in front of the cricket ground have been covered by other speakers, most notably Mrs. Carmichael, who I wholeheartedly concur with. Dr. Val Inchley also covered a lot of the areas, and Mr. Gormley, is it, or Mr. Gorley? Obviously, his input in terms of the noise limiting device, very, very useful to me. I would like to re-emphasise, I know as you have mentioned, that parking isn't part of this in terms of the appeal today. I would like to back up what other people have said in regards to that, because in some respects it is almost impossible to get a car parking space outside your own home in the evening, or from about 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening these days, and that's largely as a result of overspill from the cricketing ground car park. Is that everything? Something. I think that's all I wanted to add, and thank you again for the opportunity to put my thoughts across. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for cross-referencing that to other comments. I've got to go back to Ms. Lynch to see if her connection is improved. Ms. Lynch, are you able to hear us?
Good morning. I hope you can hear me this time.
It's still okay. Breaking up, I'm afraid. I tell you what, we'll try. Can you hold on a minute? We'll just turn our cameras off. Colleagues, can we turn our cameras off? That might assist. But if it's at obviously Miss Lynch's end, can you speak again, Miss Lynch?
Yeah. Is that any better? What I will do, if not, I will put my comments in the chat again.
It's slightly still. Let me ask the committee manager. Can she hear it? Because essentially, you know, that's a sort of test of whether we could proceed.
No, Chair, it's really breaking up on my end, so I can't actually hear what's being said.
That's a shame. I will put the chat then.
Yes, could you put them in the chat, Miss Lynch?
Yes.
Sorry about that, but it's obviously just one of those technical issues. And then we do read all the documents, of course. So we've read letters. But if you put them in the chat, we'll make sure we have a look at the chat. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. Colleagues, if you want to put your cameras back on. Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody, for those submissions. Colleagues, we have a number of points made which have been cross-referenced. Councillor Beecham, do you have any questions to any of the people who've just made submissions now?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, there's obviously the point that there seems to be no additional time or effort being put into controlling anything that may be going wrong as far as this is concerned. And although everything has been on a slow increase over the years, and it's 100 and whatever it is years that it's been going, we must ensure that the people that are being upset by this have got the reliable voice with the club to get it put right and monitored. And of course they do have the sense of being able to get in touch with the various authorities if it doesn't fit in. And I'm wondering if the lawyer has any information as far as that's concerned to ensure that the adequate resources are put into the place.
Okay, well, I'll ask him to respond to that. I'm sure Mr. Humphries is making notes of this, and I'll ask him to come back on that. Councillor Straker-Wells, do you have any questions to any of the people making the presentations just now?
I'm not sure it's a question. It's probably an observation from what I've heard. I mean, we've had a mention of numbers, noise, traffic, parking, communications with the club. And the question in my mind is, although I don't know if anybody can answer it, is it tolerable now, but likely to get much worse with additional numbers? And to what extent the controls will be, therefore, operable, because the controls presumably refer to what's in existence now. Is increased commercialization likely to be a factor? And the expansion of activities, is that likely to add to the distress of residents if the controls are not what they should be, and so on? But perhaps that's more for the applicant than it is for the residents. However, I would just like to thank them for their candour in setting out the issues that were concerning them. And also be assured that they have been listened to very, very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues, for those points. And thank you, everyone who made representations. It is very important we hear from you. And thank you again for sort of reaffirming Ms. Carmichael's particular presentation, which was very comprehensive. Now, procedurally, we would normally move to taking a summing up from each of the people we just heard from. But if Mr. Humphreys agrees, and I don't want to impose any burden on him unduly, I wonder if I could ask him to make his closing submission now, and then I'll round up with going back to those who've made representations to see if they wish to make any further representations by summing up. Because obviously a number of points have been posed by both members and residents, and it would be useful to hear from Mr. Humphreys and his colleagues on those points prior to the residents making any summing up. Would you be agreeable to that, Mr. Humphreys?
Yes, Chair, I'm content with that, but I just ask that I theoretically should have the last word, as it were. So if there's anything that comes out, the responses to my response that I then need to respond to, but I'm happy with that process, subject to that caveat.
Yes, I think that's reasonable. I will bring you in right at the end, so you have the last word. Yeah, because that is the correct procedure. But I just think it'd be helpful if you could answer the various of the points that have been made just now. That would assist the committee. So, yeah, Mr. Humphreys, if you could.
Yes, of course, Chair. And Chair, just before I do that, if I could just say this, what I'll respond to are the points that are relevant, and I say that in a technical sense. I'm not meaning any sort of disrespect to anybody by saying anything they've said is irrelevant, but just what I mean is this is a licensing application for a specific application, as you're aware, and indeed you've already indicated yourself, Chair. What you can consider today is limited by the context in which we're considering things. So the responses I will deal with are the ones that go to that. And like I said, I don't mean any disrespect to anybody by that. I'm using that in a technical sense. A number of points were made about lighting. As I've indicated, that's just not simply part of this application. There'll be no change to lighting if this application is approved, modified, refused. That's just not something we're here to consider. It's just not a part of the application. A lot of points have been made about car parking. Again, this is beyond the scope of what we're considering today. We hear what is said by local people in this regard, but it's not something that we're concerned with today as part of this application. In terms of lots of comments about the noise limiter, I think the easiest way to deal with this is if we go back to what the agreed condition is. So this is page 159 of 176 or page 123 of your bundles. And just to highlight some points from this, The noise limiting device has to be one of a type that is approved by the Environmental Protection. The first safeguard in that process is it is they who have to approve the type. So that gives control in that regard, because they say, yes, this is one that is capable of doing the job, so that can be approved. The second level of control is the level that the noise limiting device is set at is one that is agreed with the Environmental Protection section. So it's not us who is determining the appropriate level of noise, at which point that becomes active. It's the council's Environmental Protection section. So that's the next layer of control that comes in. That is independent analysis of what the appropriate level is. The way these devices work is, I think as was outlined by one of the objectives, is when a noise level is reached that is above the appropriate level, all the amplification equipment just cuts out. The power just cuts out. So you can't exceed that level of music. So it either just cuts it, or it puts a limit on the system so that level of noise cannot be exceeded. So that is how they work. Councillors, I'm sure you've dealt with many applications where a condition of this nature relating to a noise limiting device has been imposed. So it's a tried and tested method of controlling noise in licensed premises. I can confirm that, obviously, as a matter of fact, that only works in relation to the amplified music, because that's all it could do. You can't have a noise limiter for unamplified music, because that's not how it works as a system. So, for example, if there was a situation where somebody was playing an acoustic guitar, we couldn't limit that by a noise limiter, because it's technically not possible, because it's unamplified. So we obviously just couldn't do that. My response to those points about, well, those elements would be, we struggle to see how noise of that nature would be at such a level to cause a problem, because it's, by its nature, it's quieter. And in any event, the Deregulation of Music Act doesn't require you to have a license for certain times for that type of music. So it's been nationally recognised as sort of beyond control, basically, or something that doesn't need to concern us. In relation to other methods of controlling the noise, the condition in relation to closing of a door, as you can see on this, that's in relation to when the function room is in use. When regulated entertainment takes place in the function room, the door to the members' bar shall remain shut. So that's controlling a specific part of the building. The club does actually have air conditioning. I think a point was made, well, how can you keep doors, etc., shut if you don't have air conditioning? The club does have air conditioning, and they've installed that to assist in, the closure of doors, etc., to keep things cool. So that is something that we do have. In terms of managing of the outside area, that is completely uncontrolled by the license at the moment. There's no conditions on the existing license that regulate that outside space. And so by allowing this application, you're introducing statutory controls by the mechanism of the licensing regime, which aren't in place at the moment. So hopefully that is of some reassurance to those listening that as a result of this application, the council would actually have increased powers to ensure that those areas are regulated, because there's the condition, as we've discussed, relating to the outside areas, whereas at the moment, there is no such condition. And so that is giving the control that currently is lacking in a legal sense. We will continue to police those outside areas. We have paid staff who work behind the bar and a paid bar supervisor to control the behaviour of patrons. And that's what we will continue to do. So in terms of asking people, that is part of their job, and they will do that. There's been a general characterisation of the club as somehow moving away from being a sports club to a primarily social club, and the club just wouldn't accept that characterisation. We have a bar, the profits of which, as I've already outlined, prop up the club. We're not in any way moving away from being a sports club. That is what the club is at its core and will continue to be. It's not becoming some sort of freestanding entertainment destination. It's actually a members club. So the people who go there are members of the sports club. It's not just a place where people just pitch up and attend to have a drink or whatever. That's just not how it's run. It's run as a members club. You don't get strangers coming here to drink. That's not the modus operandi of the business. It's no part of this application to extend the drinking area as such, because that's just not part of this application. Again, we're just looking to license that area, so when required, we can sell drinks outside rather than having people go inside. And there's been a remodel of the club, so its physical layout has changed, and we need to update the plan to reflect that as well. Because we obviously have to do that, because the plan has to be up to date to reflect the actual physical layout of the building. So that again is part of the explanation for the application. I think those are the points I need to respond to. And oh, apologies. In terms of a point of contact at the club, you have the chairperson here today, and he's happy to be the point of contact. Anybody who's attended today knows now who he is if they didn't know before. And if people have any concerns, that feel free to get in touch with him. But on that, I must stress that until this application went in, nobody has contacted Mr. Hoffman in his capacity as a chairperson, other than in relation to issues about parking, which is again something that's not part of this this application. So, and obviously, as you're aware from your own officer's report, this is not a premises which has got a history of complaints against it. The council have had no interaction with it in that regard, and so that background situation is not there. And if I could just, I think, take a step back for a moment, this would be quite useful. The people you've heard from today are local residents who are objectors, and I've spoken on behalf of the club, supported by the other two individuals who are with me. I've given you a flavour of the number of members we have, for example, youth who play cricket at the club, for example, or people who are involved in boys and girls football. We would have loved to have had all of them come along today and tell you what their thoughts are on how the club is run and how they think it's a positive thing and how they think it's well managed, and that in their experience it's been positive, it's respectful to its neighbours. But that's not how these hearings work. All you can do is hear from me and the other applicants. And I really would just ask councillors that you bear that in mind when considering this application. There could have been literally hundreds of people we could have brought with us to speak in support of us, but that wouldn't assist you in the sense of, because they'd just be confirming what I say. But I think it is important to bear that in mind, because that is the full picture of this. And the application we're concerned with today, it's not a review. It's not an application for a new license. It's a modification to an existing license, which results in greater licensing control. There's more conditions. It reflects the up-to-date on-the-ground situation. And I really would like to stress to all of those who've made representation that this application should be supported and allowed. It adds more control. It gives you, as the licensing authority councillors, greater oversight, because there's more controls on the license. You can do more about it if there's a problem. We don't accept that there will be a problem, because we've been in this location for over 100 years, positively supporting this local community, and that's what we want to continue to do. So, councillors, I hope that has addressed everything that I need to address. Should anybody else wish to say anything else and requires me to respond to it further, I will do. But the club really would like to stress that this is a positive thing, and it should be supported. There's certain things that you just can't consider today. What you're considering is this very specific application, and it's not actually asking for very much in reality. It's an update. Councillors, unless there's anything else from yourselves at this stage, that would be my summing up.
Okay, colleagues, I've varied the procedure slightly. Was there anything else you wanted to ask, Mr. Humphreys?
Not me, thank you, Chairman.
No, thank you, Chair.
No? Okay, thank you for that. Okay, now we'll give you a chance to sum up at the end, Mr. Humphreys, as agreed. Thank you for that. Okay, now I'm back to those making representations, and you have an opportunity. It's summing up, so it's not new information really, but you have a chance to comment if you wish. You don't have to, but I will go down the list to see if anybody wants to sum up. Ms. Ingley, did you want to? Sorry, Mr. Thompson. Sorry, I'll go back to the order I was in earlier. Mr. Thompson, did you want to say anything by way of final words?
Yeah, I accept the club has done great things for the area. No one's opposed to them doing sporting events, and it's fantastic to have that. What we're talking about is the noise is the problem. That's the issue for us. It's not about the club. We want the club to be successful. We accept that it's a business as well as a club. So we're happy with that. But what the problem is the noise at the night time. I mean, Mr. Humphreys said that it's a members only. That's not true. If you look at the way if you look at the website, they advertise that you can actually hire that building. So if they started having parties and things like that late into the night, that's not people that are club members who have got respect for the club. That is people that are strangers to the club. So I'd just like to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. Mrs. Carmichael, would you like to say something in summing up?
Only in as much as Mr. Humphreys said about the club being members, it does stipulate on the website that it is open to the public. So I am presuming by that means that anybody can just walk in there. And the only other issues that I've got is that the questions that I asked that, you know, sort of we would actually like the answers to, please.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Mr. Gillett.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Gillett, we can.
I'll speak for myself only. From what I hear, I believe there are some 70 representations officially. Anecdotally, I hear 120. So there are a lot of people, and even though there's a misunderstanding of what the application was for, it shows that there are many people out there who have been complaining for a good few years as the club has extended. And this, for once, has given them an opportunity to express their feelings very strongly. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hussain?
Yes.
Mr. Hussain?
Hello there. Yeah, I mean, again, I think it'll just be a repetition of what my fellow neighbours have said there about the noise issue. I've already put my objections forward around the noise. I've also submitted my evidence around breach of the licensing conditions, which the barrister hasn't addressed. There's notably a few points around breach of license in the chairman's statement as well, which hasn't been addressed. The point about the members only policy for usage of the premises, again, I disagree with, because you know, as my fellow neighbours have said, there's a the website, obviously stating that it's open to public. I'd also question, whether the existing could bring along friends, families with them as part of the membership, which would raise concerns. And another main point, really, which I've laid out in my objection, which is my dear concern around safeguarding the well-being of my children, being right backed up to the cricket club grounds. We've noticed antisocial behaviour, strong language, unsociable times, hours, throughout the day, which is obviously impacting my myself and my infant children, and it's going to be long-standing. So, with the submission of the plans and the areas that's going to be covered, I do not believe that it will allow the controls for the cricket club to regulate people from disturbing the local residents with what's in place right now. There's no way of stopping individuals from coming out of those designated areas, backed up to people's gardens, and like I said, the antisocial behaviour that we're having to put up with and listen to, it's just really disturbing. So yeah, that's my main points, really, and I hope that they get addressed as part of this.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Hussain. So on to Dr. Inchley. Dr. Inchley, you want to sum up?
Yes. The point was made that it's not a social club, and I understand that, and obviously that is clear, but the proportion of social activities in relation to sporting activities has clearly increased. The point was made that in the past there have been no complaints, but all the things that are being mentioned are things that have escalated in the last few years since the changes from being just a cricket club. And finally, what I would say is that, with all due respect to the lawyer who has discounted things like traffic and light and parking and so on that are not, strictly speaking, to do with the licence, which is technically true, in fact, they are all knock-on effects from having an increased area for serving and consuming alcohol, and therefore inviting more people into the area. And with more people, there's the more likelihood of bad behaviour, greater noise, more traffic, more parking problems, etc. Therefore, they are related, albeit indirectly.
Thank you very much. Now, Ms. Lynch was next. We have certainly received her comments on chat. So I don't know, Ms. Lynch, whether you're still connected to us. But there was that problem with the communication there. Ms. Lynch, are you there? No, she sent the comments by chat. So we have those before us. Thank you very much for that. So Mr. Gormley.
Thank you. I'll be very brief, but I just wanted to go back to the point that the lawyer made regarding the policing and enforcing of the outside activities. As I mentioned earlier, I too run a social club, and the responsibility for people outside of the premises, I can tell you 100% that the bar staff who he alluded to would be policing this will not want to address or approach revellers outside the grounds of the cricket club, asking them to A, stop drinking, B, move inside, or 3, make their way home. It will be in exactly the same way as people are shy of asking people to wear face masks when it was compulsory to do so. So I don't accept from the lawyer that the policing of the noise, the drinking and the antisocial behaviour will be monitored and policed by the staff. I think that's totally unfair and will not happen. I finally would say that as the previous speakers have just said, that it was probably about 90% sports club, 10% social club up till recent years, and that balance is now swayed more to 70% social club, 30% to sports club. and will continue to do so by people attending funerals, birthdays, christenings, parties and sporting events coming up. And it is not a membership club only. In fact, local residents are invited to join as members with a discounted membership fee to try and entice them to stay quiet about some of the issues that arise. So I do think this is going to add to the problems going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gormley. And then finally, Ms. Hingley. Ms. Hingley?
It's okay, so I'm just trying to get through to you. Hello, I'll be brief as well. I think most of the things that I was thinking have already been covered by the previous speakers, most specifically Dr. Inchley and Mr. Gormley. It's very interesting to get his input about how control might not be forthcoming from members of staff behind the bar. I think a lot of it does actually come down to control and how that will actually be enacted at ground root level. And I think that is what bothers us most of all. And thank you again for letting us speak. I appreciate it. Thank you.
And thank you very much, everyone, for your contributions, in the chat or in the documents or verbally today. We will be considering those, obviously, in due course. Now back to Mr. Humphreys for the final closing submission. Mr. Humphreys.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, just in relation to that point about members of staff not being able to control the outside area, the club just does not accept that there is any evidence to support why those members of staff would be unable to do that. That is these people who are paid to do a job do their job. There's just no reason why the bar staff are incapable of saying to people, we've now closed the outside area, can you come inside? I just struggle to see what the evidential basis is to support that point. And we heard there how the suggestion that it's not a members club, but then also one of the representatives talked about how local people are invited to join as members. So a bit of a disconnect there, it seems to me. But Chair and councillors, can I just take you please to page 37 of your report pack, or I think it's also page number 1, depending which pagination you're using, which should be the first page basically of the report into this application. We go to the third paragraph of this. This is where it's setting out what the application is. The application also seeks to add the provision of regulated entertainment consisting of films, indoor sporting events and recorded music to operate indoors only from 11 AM until 11:45 PM Monday to Friday, 11 AM until 1 AM Friday and Saturday, and 11 AM until 10:30 PM Sunday, with live music to operate indoors only from 11 AM until 11 PM. Of that, the only elements that have been objected to are those relating to music. It seems to me the concern about noise. Environmental Health have looked at this. They've been to the site, looked around the local area, looked around the premises, and have suggested conditions to manage that. And in my very firm submission, there is no evidence to go behind that professional representation from the council's Environmental Health Department. The next element is to add the provision of late night refreshment indoors only until 11:45 PM and 1 AM Friday and Saturday. Not aware that there's really any objection to that element. That then leaves the change to the licensed area. Because like I said at the start, there's some conditions that have been updated. I'm not aware that there's any objection by anybody to any of that. Going then to the change of the area, the plan needs to be updated because the physical layout has changed. The internal area of the club has been remodeled. It's physically different to what is currently on the license, so that needs to be updated. People can already, under the existing license, drink outside. That is not changing as part of this application. What would change is we would be allowed to have a pop-up bar in that covered area when required. That's the only change that's really meaningfully been asked for. And again, in terms of what the actual consequence of that would be, struggle to see why that would be said to be problematic. And again, I've just stressed that people have actually been to this site, looked at it, and have found it to be acceptable. The relevant independent experts who the council employed to do this have carried out that exercise. And so, councillors, in all the circumstances, we've listened to everything locals have said, but with the greatest respect, I think there has been a mischaracterisation of what it is we're actually asking for in this application. The scope of what you have to consider is actually very narrow, and I'd invite you to approve this application. Sorry, Chair, I think you're on mute.
I am indeed, yes. That is your submission then, Mr. Humphreys?
Yes, I've nothing further to add, sir.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Thank you for your assistance today, and thank you to everyone who has attended today to give us their views. What we will now do is ask all the parties to leave the MS Teams meeting, and the members, the committee lawyer and the committee manager will go into private session while the subcommittee makes its decision. You'll be notified of the decision of the subcommittee within 5 working days. Again, thank you very much, everyone. For members, we'll take a 10-minute comfort break, so we'll convene in the private session at 5 to 12. But again, thank you very much to everyone. I close this public panel meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good day, everyone.